welcome back to Change Ed.
Change it.
The number one, everyone's favoriteest podcast in all of America. I am one of your most favorite hosts, Andrew Kuhn, education consultant from Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. Here with me is
Patrice Semachek, an educational consultant, also out of Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. And our favorite,
Tony Marabito, Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit. Whatever you want my
SDF.
title to be today.
SDF.
Yes, SDF works.
Well, on this show, we have Patrice's guest, who...
Mystery guest.
When you walked out of the room, I said, what is the mystery guest's last name? And Patrice goes, I'm not telling you. I said, I'm not going to look her up. She's gone for a minute. I don't have enough time to Google her. So, Patrice, would you please introduce us so I can write down our guest's last name?
Yes. This is the amazing Jackie Harris. She and I met, I don't know, a few years ago. How long have we been friends?
2 to 3.
2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. She is a fantastic teacher on sabbatical. Yeah. But she works for Norristown.
Oh,
okay. Nice. Hi, Jackie.
Hello. It's nice to be here. Very exciting. Before we begin, I want to clarify that I'm speaking today in a personal capacity as an educator, and the views and opinions I share are my own and do not represent the position or the views of the Norristown Area School District.
Thank you. Jackie, can you tell us who you are and what you do and how you got there?
Okay, so as you said, I am a teacher.
Amazing.
In Norristown. This is my 23rd year. I teach science.
Yay!
I love it. So before I was a science teacher, I always say I'm a scientist.
Yes.
That teaches science.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Because she legitimately is.
Yeah. So my undergrad is I have a bachelor's in medical technology, and I worked at Jefferson Hospital.
Wow.
Jefferson University Hospital in the transfusion unit, all capacities of transfusion medicine, in the blood bank, in the donor center, and in tissue typing, which is where if people need a organ, that's where we do that kind of work. So I learned all the facets of that. That's not usual, but I like stuff like that. So I was cross-trained everywhere. Then when my husband and I decided to have a family, we moved out here to Montgomery County, and I wanted to be a little closer to work, and I wanted to work second shift. So I took a job in the vaccine division at Merck. And I did that for a number of years. In both of those previous capacities, I always did some sort of training and education. And then when we were having a family, I thought, maybe I should go back and be a science teacher, because then I could be on my children's schedule, and it would work better for our family. So that's what I did. I went back to Ursinus to get my teaching certification. And prior to that at Jeff, I do have a master's degree in immunology and microbiology, but I just never can get enough education. I'm back in school again. I'll just say that.
She's literally in school again.
But I got my certification at Ursinus while I was working second shift at Merck. For my 14 weeks of student teaching, I was student teaching during the day in methactin and then going to work.
Gosh, Jackie.
And I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So it was a lot. It was a lot going on.
You just didn't sleep.
Yeah. But here I am, 23 years later. I'm secondary ed science 7 through 12. Biology, I'm definitely a life scientist at heart, but being now in the middle school, I'm learning a lot about earth science and different sciences. So it's just more and more. I love it.
So Jefferson to Merck to middle school.
Yeah.
That's
via high school.
Via high school.
Via high school. Yeah.
Local stop in high school. Yeah.
Little pit stop.
So tell us the differences between being in a hospital, being in a professional setting, and then going to work with young kids.
That's a good question.
It is a very good question. Other than when a trauma comes in, you can manage your schedule very differently when you're in a hospital, when you're in a vaccine division versus when you're in a school. Your time is not your own. It's very, you're on. When you come to school, you're on.
No bathroom breaks.
No, really. Really not. And being close to, AARP is messaging me now. So
me too.
Bladder issues of a senior. It's definitely trying. So that's very different. Like I said, other than a trauma, you can be on for 8 hours straight. But I think that's the biggest difference. And you wear many hats. Your job description is way more defined in a hospital, even in the vaccine division. You wear so many different hats in a public school situation. Yeah. So I think those are the major differences.
This is my own soapbox, but huge proponent of teachers working in a different field first. I was in business first, and then I came to education, and it gives you a whole new perspective.
Very different.
Yeah. So I love your background.
Yeah,
awesome.
I so agree with that. The other thing too is I feel like you're very resourceful. I came in as, not fresh out of college. I was a resourceful person, and there was things that are like the training that you get, but then there's these soft skills that you kind of already had when you're somewhere else. It definitely gives you perspective.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. I was thinking about when I was going to come and do this podcast, I see science as a public health issue. There's all aspects of public health that I feel science, initially when I was teaching high school, I thought I want to sort of demystify science, but I want people to understand how science is related to their lives, your health, nutrition, your physical wellness. There's a lot of talk about vaccines right now, understanding things. I can always connect everything to science. I think science is such an important subject for kids to be prepared for just life. But now we're going into AI and just this very fast-paced future. There's these junctures of science into interesting fields too. So I think there's so much you can do with a little bit of science, from physical science all the way to life science. It's endless.
And you can pretty much teach every subject through science.
Oh, absolutely.
You're reading in science, you're doing math in science, you're critically thinking. Like, you have to understand the history behind what's coming for the science, for the social studies piece. And even like geography comes into play sometimes with like, even just like diseases and things, like figuring out. So I agree with you. Science could be the base for literally everything.
I just recently said to somebody, math and ELA are very, very big tested subjects. And obviously children need to read, and math is very important. But I just recently said, my thought is, I don't think reading is the gateway to science, but I absolutely think that science is the gateway to reading. And math, because those are tools you need.
You're using those skills to do something cool in science. Yeah.
This makes me think of when my children were younger, they would watch Thomas the Tank Engine. And they had this image where there was a train yard, but they also had a rotating piece. Track.
Oh, yeah. I know.
That's what I'm thinking of now for science, right? Like, you can pull the train out, and then you can go on any track. Sometimes you can get onto multiple tracks through this work you're doing.
Yes.
I'm curious to hear from you. What are your thoughts when it comes to steels? I'm curious about what you see for steels, because you've had this worldly experience when it comes to science. Is there a difference between how education had been going or the direction we were going and steels, and then maybe some benefits that you see, or even some drawbacks or concerns that you might have?
Well, because of my age, I certainly was trained very much, you need to know your content. But always in science, you always had a lab. So there was always an experiential piece of it. And I think that I had to be a little bit of a convert, because I know how I was educated and how I'm used to educating. And the thing that and my husband's a scientist as well. So we talk about this a lot. And we both did so much better when we were in labs, when we had our lab experience, as opposed to the theory never connected with us until we had the lab experience. So now we're just kind of flipping things, where the great thing about steels, again, you have the approach of let's have an experience. But the other thing is, I think we're really trying to get the kids to think and wonder and ask why. So we're starting with a phenomenon. And if they're not thinking, oh, how does that happen? You can pose a question like, did you ever think about why this happened? I'm doing a PowerPoint and I just put a picture of the Aurora Borealis. And I was like, just like, why all those colors? There's your phenomenon. And kids can just start the conversation. What are you thinking? I think that this is a better approach.
You've been bringing in phenomenon your whole career because you've already had that experience, right? So you can easily do that.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I think that's awesome.
Now, when you were at Merck, what was the most important? Was it most important that someone had the answer? Because that's how we were teaching kids. You had to have the answer, or was it more of this other approach where it's like, okay, let's look at the problem. Let's break it apart. What do we have to do? How do we fix it? So again, I guess what I'm trying to get at is one of the things that we've been saying is still is more of a real life approach to learning and living science. Is that the case from your experience?
I think I probably had that more in the hospital setting than I did at Merck, because in the vaccine production, I wasn't in the research component production. So production is mapped out already. Yeah. You may or may not have troubleshooting when, you have a fermenter or something like that goes down. Like, why did that happen? But it's pretty scripted, except for when the research meets the production. Something is called a scale up. So if you've ever heard of the Gardasil vaccine, initially that was just a laboratory thing. So how do we take it from it's working in the lab, and now we have to make tremendous amount of doses, scale it up. How do we do that? So that's where, the reality of like, what is the reality of this situation? What are we going to do? What's this going to look like? We're thinking more. We're using this small fermenter up to this big fermenter. What is that? Like, how
does it change the chemistry? Yeah, like that's interesting.
Yeah.
I never even thought of that. I just assumed like in the lab, if it works this way, then you just double or triple or quadruple the formula and it works. But it might not be the same. It might not be that way.
And you're also working at that point, you're working with other teams.
Yeah.
So it's that other, we had electrical engineers that came in. We had a lot of different teams that collaborate as you want, because we all have our maybe fields of science, but that's where it really comes to working in the real world, that you need to talk with other teams to make this actually happen.
Yeah.
I wanted to save this for the final thought because it's something you said, but it was so good, but I can't. I have to use it now. There's a significant difference when it comes to steels. And the difference is that we are treating science as a gateway to learning. And that is a tremendous difference in the way that we approach it and the way that we go into it. And before, when we were using it one-dimensionally, I think where there are a lot more scientifically oriented students who were turned off because they're like, that's not how I want to do it. So actually with what you were describing with the tail end of that production for Merck, that to me reminded me more of like how science has been taught, right? Like it's very analytical. It's very step by step. We're following a formula. There's a recipe. There's no question. I would think for the majority of students, certainly when I was in school, that's what I thought science was. And I'm like, I'm good.
That and a guy in a lab coat.
Right. I'm good.
Right.
However,
I wanted to be Bill Nye, but I got the guy in the lab coat that didn't move.
That tracks, Tony. So,
however, Tony's fault.
With steels, by using it as a gateway now, and even what I'm hearing from you is that there are different levels and this is only one of the levels. So if you're a student who is more inclined to say, yep, that's my jam. I want the analytics. I want to make sure quality control is me. There's a spot for you. But if you're someone who's like, no, I want to problem solve, there's also a spot for you.
Yes.
So this is very encouraging and validating to say, yeah, there's a spot for everyone here. Whatever your skill set or whatever interest is, there's a spot for you somewhere out there. There's so many jobs, so many possibilities. You even brought in the future and how the future is now and all these things are growing and changing. So I've heard nothing but validation from your career and your experience that has said this is the way to move because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's next.
So my question then is, how does that translate into the classroom? So how you were taught a certain way. In high school, you probably taught the same way you were with a little bit of because of your background. So how does that shift happen in your classroom? How has that happened for you?
Well, and I do have to give credit to there's great science curriculum platforms out there. And I think that we're currently using Amplify and they kind of design it that way that you're starting with a phenomenon. You're starting with a demonstration or asking questions or getting them to have an experience and then talk about the experience and get all their different views and then kind of pose a couple, whether you wanted to call them research questions, we call them, overarching questions or just some questions that are going to guide you through the learning. And I don't know that I would have thought of that starting that way on my own. I very much before Steels, I am a hands-on person, so I always had centers and, but I have to say that I probably kind of gave vocabulary before, but there was always a vocabulary in a picture. Yeah. So there's always something like that it was they could see. And the other thing that I think that the science platforms and Steels are suggesting, you're not getting all the vocabulary. Yeah. Do a couple words, have your experience. You just give it as it comes along.
Yeah.
You mentioned before you thrived once you started doing labs, right? I feel like it's just watching a YouTube video trying to change your oil until you actually change the oil. You don't understand it. So that being said, in your position now, how do you balance? Obviously, if I could do labs every single day, I would love it. The kids would love it. But how do you balance that? And I still have to cover all this content because it's on a state test that we're...
Yeah. Well, and that is very tricky, I think, for science, because I'm even old enough to know when science teachers got an extra prep for all the seriously. We got extra time because labs can be a lot to set up and break down.
Yes.
So currently, I think that right now we're trying to pace out, amplify, and I think giving teachers the room to. They've got to experiment themselves and see. So your first year in anything, a first year teacher, new curriculum, a first year is always you're in an experimental phase and you're figuring out what's working. I'm a big believer that things can be dovetailed. And until I see it all and I touch it all and I do it, I'm better able to say, while I'm doing this, I can do this. Yeah. And it's a little bit of a time saver. But in the first year, that expectation is
difficult.
It's very difficult. But I definitely think that you can do it. And you can also set up a couple different stations. If you have multiple labs that you want to get done, okay, get them all up. Yeah. Let the kids rotate through stuff. And then, what did you think? And then, so I do think there's different ways that you can go about figuring all that out.
Isn't she great?
That seems like it would be more valuable. Instead of going to PD where you're not getting too much out of it, giving teachers time to be able to experiment
Tony, whose PD are they going to?
Not ours.
Andrews?
Not ours.
They're going to Andrews.
I've heard some things about him. But that'd be great if you just get teachers in a room, similar grade levels.
But that is in itself PD. If we're being real, that in itself is.
I was just thinking that.
Active participation in doing something that is professional development. Sometimes I think we get stuck in this. Someone has to stand in front of the room for 3 hours or 6 hours or whatever and talk at you.
Maybe a half hour or an hour in theory, but then I want to be hands-on.
Yes. I am a big believer in learn something, do something. Yes. I'm going to talk to you for maybe 15, 20 minutes and then we're going to do something.
Well, and I think that's why these CTE schools are so successful because kids get in there and you are hands-on.
We could just
from the minute you're in there.
Everything. Yeah. I swear.
I agree.
They get a bad rap, but that's just hands-on learning. It's awesome.
I want to back this train up for a second.
What?
And say
we besmirched his professional development.
Nobody, it's not news to anybody.
Now in college they have Rate My Professor. Is there like a Rate My IU facilitator?
It's asynchronous. It's asynchronous. They don't actually have to deal with you.
Yeah.
If you're about to tell them that you have an A+ on Rate My Professor, it's because they don't deal with you. Moving on.
Okay.
Back to Jackie.
Jackie, something else you just said that resonated with me that I want to maybe dive into a little bit more, or at least point out, is that I think there's a significant difference between a learning curve and a productive struggle. Right. When we're in elementary school, productive struggle is a big part of that learning curve. How do we work through that? If we hit a challenge, what do we do? What does it look like? But really, as educators, we almost have, in a lot of ways, in theory, perfected the productive struggle. And now we're really focused on that learning curve. I think the challenge comes in, like specifically with Steels, the turnaround was fast, right? Like you still need to teach and you need to figure out this new thing and then incorporate it and make the transition. That's where it's really hard. But I think a lot of times we can confuse productive struggle with the learning curve, even as adults, right? Where we're like, I just haven't spent enough time on this. It's like, well, you actually have been educating for a while. Like, you know what you're doing. Trust yourself, lean into your strengths and what you've learned along the way. But how do we adapt and how do we kind of shift course and change from it necessarily? I think one of the big things is that before it was about the destination. And now with Steels, it's definitely about the journey. There is a destination. We're trying to get you somewhere, but there's learning that can happen along the way.
Absolutely. I'm finding that more just as I totally agree with you. And this is, I think, what the state wants, what the scientific community wants, that you have to, you might be uncomfortable a little bit in that struggle, but getting yourself through that is such a huge, you learn so much, you're creating stamina, you're practicing questioning, you're practicing figuring something out. Now you know that you can do that practice given a different circumstance.
Yes.
And I think Steele's gives the opportunity. I guess it's given the opportunity for the teachers too. I wasn't thinking that until it was like, oh yeah, we're kind of doing the same thing. And I've heard before you say on this podcast that's not going to be every single solitary unit is going to be like this. You're making this change, almost like accelerate that. You're starting out 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever. You're going to get there, but you just have to give yourself opportunity. And even in different lessons, you might say, oh, this lesson, I can teach this kind of like this down here. I can use that same methodology for this later lesson or something. I think it's much better. I'm excited for it, quite frankly. And I was a little resistant. I was. So
there were lots of questions.
I'm waiting for that first textbook company to come out with, let's base all of our ELA and all of our math within this science curriculum. So we're not so siloed, especially I can only speak from my elementary level because I taught 4th and 5th grade with a principal at the really lower K to 3. And if we could just have something where it all tied together, then teachers wouldn't feel like I have to get to this, I have to do this, but now I have to transition to math.
But our schedules, that's the hard part too, is like the system is not set up to be successful in that way, right?
Well,
our schedules
look at the most successful schools. We don't even... In Denmark, they're taking a 2-hour break in the middle of the day. They're starting early, they're starting late. It's
there's other factors there. They don't educate everybody like we do. Like
Correct.
Our classrooms are very different, but our system isn't set up for that kind of thinking or that kind of teaching either. Like if you think about it, Jackie has a block of time where she's teaching science, and she could be touching on some ELA concepts or some math stuff, but her schedule itself is set up in a way. But in the elementary school, there's a lot more flexibility and freedom if we gave it. I remember, and I don't know if you were this kind of principal, Tony, where like my principal was like, here's your math block, here's your ELA block, here's your science and social studies if you get to it, but they're failing the PSSAs in math. Right. They're failing the PSSAs in reading. So if you need to extend your reading time to, it felt like 7 hours.
Do what you need to do. Yes.
Do 7 hours of reading and science will happen if it happens. Right.
And, I just wanted to say, I talk about that dovetail. I've always said we have opportunities in K to 5 or whatever. We teach health class, health, nutrition, and the things that are going to be on the biology keystone, like biomolecules. Yeah. You can start showing kids these things. Yeah. If we had a little bit more vertical conversation and then that collaboration in or cross-curricular, whatever you want to say, we're teaching many of these scientific topics in other disciplines, and we're covering it, and we can partner and collaborate that way too. And I wish the teams, like, I don't know if it's science chairs or, things like that, or people like that.
Those conversations would lead to using the same vernacular.
Yes.
Because they probably are talking about it, but they're not using the same terms. Right. And so when you get them in the middle school, they might have talked about it, but they look at you like they've never heard it before because the teacher used a different term.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes we think kids can't handle that.
Yeah. The vertical planning is massive, and we just don't.
Someone just said this recently. We think some of these younger students can't handle it, yet 5-year-olds can tell you what every dinosaur ever was.
Absolutely. And use their appropriate names.
Correct. So we can expose them to some science stuff as well.
Go ahead.
Don't they say that's when kids learn language? I mean, they're teaching multiple languages. Yes. I think biology, I think in a sense it's another language, but they can
easily.
They can do it.
Yeah.
They want to. That's the crazy part. We school them out of asking questions. And now with Steeles, we're trying to get them to ask questions again. So if we just let them be curious from the beginning, right? There's that study that I talk about all the time that Ken Robinson reports on his TED Talks, where kids in kindergarten ask like 100 questions a day, and a high schooler asks 1 question a month, if we're lucky. So what have we done to squash the curiosity? We've schooled them out of curiosity because we put so much onus on the answer.
And sometimes kids, will say, they doubt their question.
Yes.
If that's a question you have, it's valid.
Or they're like, I have a stupid question.
Yeah,
there's no questions that are
just
stupid.
Another reason why I like labs more, because they are in groups. They're less likely to be afraid to ask a question because they're surrounded by, as opposed to I'm raising my hand and
in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So, right. And I think a crafty teacher, what I really do try to do is no matter what, because you will get those left-wing questions or those, you go,
that is not even close.
So sometimes I just say something like, tell me a little bit more. And then I say, oh, I see that connection you're making. Yeah, that I never even thought of that. How
even if you don't
brilliant.
See it, that's a very good teacher.
Yep. That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jackie, you have had an amazing career. I know it's not over yet.
She's in school again.
I know.
Yeah, you're still learning, which says so much about you and your character and who you are as a person and as an educator. And you can tell that you're not done, that you've got a lot, that you're just enjoying what you're doing, which is something that we all need in whatever we're doing, right? Whatever you're doing, make it something you enjoy. We got one shot at this thing called life, so let's make sure we enjoy it. I'm going to ask you for your second to last final thought. If it were my show, I would let you have the final thought, but these two want me to always have the final thought. I don't know why it is.
No, it is your show.
So
I'm just a guest.
Back anytime.
We're going to cut that. So Jackie, here's the question. I'd love for you to be able to give a final thought on, kind of what we talked about today and or like any nuggets that you've seen or you've taken away, or you're like, man, if I was on the most popular podcast in the whole world, what would I say to other educators? You're not on that show, but if you were, what would you say? I'm just kidding.
Close.
This is that show.
I really like when educators collaborate with one another. I've also been part of a couple grants where we did cross-curricular activities. And I just think that you can't parse out, as you were kind of alluding to before, science and history. These things are not siloed. They all occur all at the same time. They all affect us in, the future that we're going. So more collaboration is definitely key. Look for those opportunities. I also think that I feel like the science community, if you want a good feeder program for your careers, get yourself into the schools, partner with some schools, make that opportunity, whether it's the educators, trying to get out there and make partnerships, or you're coming from your school, lab, business, wherever, come in and partner, because I think that would be invaluable. There's only so many resources a school district, especially a public school district, has, and we need your help to give our kids those experiences and see themselves in a great, interesting career.
And there's so many jobs that we as educators don't know about. That are out there that would create
100,
maybe even a lifelong passion for some of these kids. Yes. Like that's the part that I think we need to really, very good point, Jackie. We really need to leverage that.
All right. Well, I guess since you guys, always want me to do this, I'll give my final thoughts.
Begging.
Yeah. Hold your breath. You ready? Here we go.
I would die because it takes you so long to figure it out.
So Jackie, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
This is definitely a very fun episode and a fun treat to have you here.
My guest is the best.
Yay.
My guest is the best. Okay.
That's my,
title of the episode.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Make sure that, listener, you like, subscribe, follow, share, tell all of your friends. This is a great way to collaborate, is to share this episode and then have a conversation about how great Jackie is and who your favorite host is, which is not really up for debate, but we can pretend like this.
It's been decided.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
Me.
All right. That felt a little too rehearsed.
It's me, and then Tony, and then you. Even with the larger stickers.
Yeah, but the way you paused made it seem like there was like multiple there
are a few times.
As if I'm like tied for fifth, right? Like I wasn't even third.
Yeah,
I'm tied
you
for
come
fifth.
after every guest.
Patrice, me, guest, you. Yeah. So
okay.
That works.
Well, at this point, I'm tied for 342.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well,
thanks Jackie. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.